Welcome to Behind the SME, the podcast where we dive into the stories of founders, leaders, and visionaries of small and medium-sized enterprises. As the CEO of a small business myself, I want to uncover what drives the success of SMEs by talking to those who are in the trenches, building their businesses from the ground up. I hope you enjoy the episode. Nicole, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So nice to have you on. I normally start by explaining how we know each other.
Yeah.
And we met in the Ritz.
We did, yes.
Which sounds way more glamorous than...
Way more glamorous than it actually was, yeah.
Than it actually was. But we were there as part of the same trade association.
Yep, yeah.
FESPA.
It was a FESPA UK event, for me, a very early in my career FESPA UK event. And FESPA UK is very different now. It's quite an interesting event, I would say.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll come back to that. I want to reflect on how it's different now to the type of events that you did then. But we clicked initially, and then we started doing some work together. And I've come up to your site a couple of times.
Yeah.
Up to Hull, very memorable trips up to Hull. For me, from the south, it's always eye-opening to go to Hull.
Yeah, and you only go to Hull if you go into Hull. It's like the end of the line.
Yeah, but a charming place as well. And here we are some 8 years later, I think almost. So having done a lot of work together over the years.
Yeah.
And I've seen the journey that RMC's been on, your business and your personal journey with RMC. And I've seen how you've gradually got more involved with FESPA and becoming a really important voice in your industry. So really grateful for you spending some time with us this morning. And hearing a little bit about your journey with both entities. But let's flip it over to hear from you exactly what you've been up to and how you've kind of got involved in RMC and what FESPA is.
Okay, so RMC is a wide format trade only print company. We've been around about 14 years. Originally it was my now ex-father-in-law's business, and I just went there temporarily. So I used to work in recruitment. That's how we actually connected, because an ex-recruiter knows an ex-recruiter. And
something in the eyes.
Definitely. Working in recruitment in London, very different to working in recruitment in Hull. And I did not enjoy recruitment in Hull as much as I'd enjoyed it in London. So I kind of went there just to do a bit of customer services for 6 months or so. And nearly 14 years later, and I own the business. So it's been quite a journey with RMC. And with FESPA, when I very first got into print, I went to a global congress in Sitges and absolutely loved it, and met so many people who I'm actually still in touch with now. And then when I got back to the UK, sort of thought, maybe I should join the UK association, which is what I did. And actually the Ritz was my first UK event where we met, and I was approached by the guy that ran it then, and he asked me would I join the board. So I joined the board quite a while ago now, did a stint as president, and then I have joined the FESPA Global Board. Yeah. And technically I'm the first woman on the board.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, a few kind of very standout achievements in that you're being very modest about, but the first one is starting as a customer service rep to then owning a business. That's an unbelievable story, and I want to hear kind of how you navigated that. But let's quickly, for those that aren't so familiar with the print industry, just explain a little bit about RMC, how you make money, the type of work that you do. If anyone would have seen your work out and about, where would they likely have seen it? That type of thing.
Any retail park in the UK, you'll see our work. But so we're just trade. We don't work with the end client ever. So majority of our work is actually signage companies, because we were born out of a signage company. So we understand their needs and wants. We also do work for exhibition companies, set and stage, design agencies. So we will produce the print and we will then send it to them or send it to site, but it has no trace that we were ever involved. we like to say we're like your silent partner. So we can print up to 5 meters wide, which some companies can't. So other printers might use us for that work, or they might use us for overflow work if they've got printers. But some companies don't have printers, but they need print. So we literally just provide the print into them. So we do a lot of what's called flex face skins. If you're not in the industry, you won't know what I'm talking about, so sorry. But if you go to any retail park and you see, you know, all the big brands there with the big signs that kind of look like they might be plastic, they're actually PVC on a roll. And I guarantee every retail park in the country will have at least one of our prints on it.
Wow.
Obviously, I can't mention any because we're not allowed to talk about our work. So it's very difficult for us because we're not allowed to talk about our work because technically it's not our work.
Yeah.
But we've done some great projects. One of the first projects I got involved with when I first started, because I did a media degree, so I'm interested in all that kind of thing. I went down to London and met a set company there, and I think I'm okay to say this now, we did a project for them for the closing ceremony for the Olympic Games. That was like one of our first major projects that we'd done, but we obviously weren't allowed to talk about it at all.
So really large printers in a huge warehouse in RMC, in Hull, end clients being shops and alike, retail companies, but not exclusively.
A lot of retail.
Could be anything.
We often see prints on the TV. I remember one Easter, I was at my friend's house and she had TV on in the background. I was like, oh, I saw those in the factory the other day. I wondered what they were. And they were like a load of numbers that we'd done for something. But I often see stuff in the factory and I don't know where it's going. Sometimes you see it, you know, I'll go out somewhere with my daughter and I'll be like, oh, I printed that. She hates it, actually. She tells me off for it. Such a print geek. And we've got actually Alex, young Alex that works for us. We've got 2 Alexes, that's why he's young Alex. When he first started, me and other Alex said to him, oh, you'll end up a massive print geek. You'll be like taking photos of stuff and telling everyone that you printed it. And he was just looked at us like, whatever. And then a couple of months later, I was out one weekend and I got a photo from him of something that he'd been involved with. And he's like, oh, I'm out with my dad. And I just said, like, I printed that.
Yeah, I love that. That's such pride. And brands are really, if you've spent hundreds of thousands on your brand and a color palette that is uniquely yours and, maybe it's copyrighted and the exact CMYK code is copyrighted or what have you. The visual representation of it has to be bang on. Your margin for error is quite small, isn't it? It's got to be perfect.
Yeah, and you'll sometimes find that brands have. So usually they'll work maybe off a Pantone reference, because CMYK across, even if you've got the same printer, the CMYK can differ. It can come out a different colour, but sometimes you'll find brands have got one reference for indoors and one reference for outdoors because light changes colour so much as well. So there's a lot of work goes into colour matching. And
do you ever have to print on something really unusual, steel or canvas or anything kind of some weird substrate?
We do get odd substrates here and there, because we've got hybrid printers, so we can do flat sheets as well as rolls. We do sometimes get weird stuff. It just depends what the client wants. So for us, it's really difficult because suppliers will come and show us like great materials or some really sustainable materials, and we'll get very excited about them and we'll do some prints on them and we'll send them to our clients, and then our clients don't send them to their clients, and then it never goes any further. So we just really print what our clients want.
Yeah. I mean, I could talk about this for hours with you, and we have in the past. One of the privileges of being in my other world as an R&D advisor is that you get a chance to speak about lots of different businesses and the most technically difficult and interesting pieces of work, and it makes you not look at the same thing ever again. Every time you go into a supermarket, you go, actually, that backlit sign, you can't notice that it's got multiple light bulbs in it. And that's because it's a design feature. They wanted it to be a uniform, look from behind. Or we did an R&D claim for the company that made the Scotland Yard sign.
Okay.
The rotating one. And the amount of engineering that went into, rotating sign. It was extraordinary. And you kind of sat there like, I will never see that sign. When it pops up on the news as the background, is always, I'll never see it the same again. I know that you could drive a transit van at 60 miles an hour and it'd be okay. Stuff like that. Really useless knowledge, perhaps, but still.
Not that useless, I don't think. Good for dinner parties.
Yeah, really, really good for dinner parties. So RMC is obviously, that's your main business. We're going to talk about the journey from customer service rep to business owner, because that's a cool story. Let's quickly talk about FESPA. What does it stand for? What is it? Yeah.
Well, FESPA is it's the Federation of European Screen Print Association, but it's moved on a lot since then.
Yeah.
But it's a well-known brand, so we can't really change it, or we could maybe change it. I don't know. But you couldn't change FESPA. It's like a name now. But FESPA is a global organisation. So a lot of people know FESPA as the trade shows they do, exhibitions that they do. So they do one a year. That's almost a byproduct of FESPA, but that's what it's now mostly known as. So FESPA's in, I think it's 36, 37 different countries across the world. And they all have their own individual associations that run as their own businesses, but they meet a couple of times a year. And it's great. You meet someone from Italy and you're chatting to them about problems that you have in your business, and they have exactly the same problems, and it's great to get ideas from different people. So at FESPA UK, we've got the Next Generation Committee, which we came up with the idea because we said, look, a lot of people feel associations are a bit outdated, and younger people are a bit like, what's that? So we thought, let's get the younger people in our companies involved, because otherwise, once we retire, that there might not be anyone to take our place. For me, it's really, the association's really important. It's really important that it keeps going. It's a place for especially smaller business owners to be able to communicate, to talk about issues you're having. It's a great networking opportunity as well. I mean, FESPA UK, actually, they take all of our waste. So they take all of our waste to be recycled, which is a service they offer to members, which a lot of the rest sort of associations don't do as much practical things like that, I think.
Yeah.
But
it's set up as a business, is that what I'm gathering?
Yeah. So FESPA is a business.
Yeah.
And mostly is involved with the event.
Do you think that's helped its success?
Oh yeah, certainly. I don't know the history properly, and you probably need to speak to Neil, who's the CEO of FESPA, to get the full lowdown. But even before he was there, originally it was just a group of people that met up, and then they came up with doing the show to make money. But it's the business runs on profit for purpose, so all of the money that is made is given back to the associations or projects, so that they can develop. So like they developed a school in Sri Lanka a few years ago. There's many projects throughout the world that happen because of the money that is made at the FESPA show that then goes back into developing the print industry.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I mean, the only reason I'm curious is because I've seen lots of different trade bodies over the years, and some are really vibrant communities, and they've got just projects coming out of their ears and ways of helping their membership, and others are just graveyards, and it's such a big mix, and some seem to get it so right, and obviously
I think
some get it so
I think it's
wrong.
difficult. It depends who's involved in it, and I can if I can be honest about FESPA UK, certainly when I joined the board, Susie had just joined the organisation, and she was taken on temporarily on a part-time basis using project funding from FESPA to try and increase the membership. And over the years, she's actually now become the MD, and she's been instrumental for the success of FESPA UK. They did do events, but they weren't as well attended and as good as they are now. They did look after their members. They certainly did. There was always a close community. But I feel like it's a closer community now. There's more openness, more honesty within businesses. So I can call a competitor of mine, and they really are a competitor of mine, and say, look, we're having this issue, and they'll help, and vice versa. We have done that in the past, and that's because we're members of FESPA. Prior to them being members of FESPA, we would never have done that.
Yeah, and you certainly get that. I mean, we're members
Mm-hmm.
on a slightly different membership structure, but you definitely feel like you're part of a community. Okay, well, I want to talk about the RMC story,
Mm-hmm.
and talk about your journey in. It was your ex father-in-law's. You joined
Yeah.
as a customer service rep. How 14 years later are you owning and running the business? That's not your
So,
typical
no,
way
well, some
through.
people may sort of think as well, oh, well, it's only because it was her father-in-law's business. Actually, it made it really difficult for me. So you can imagine, you're at work, you've been there a while, you know what you're doing, and it's not the daughter of the owner, it's the wife of the son of the owner. And they're like, what are we getting saddled with here?
So your former father-in-law started it, founded the company, set it
Yeah,
up, and so second generation.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah. And so if I popped up just to be there for a few months, and I looked at things and thought this business isn't going to succeed, not the way it was running at that time. It very much was set up to service the signage company that he had, which unfortunately no longer exists. And it there was just idle time on the printers. So me and Alex Wood, funnily enough, I recruited him. So I started a few months after him, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" We worked really hard together to generate sales, to get new clients. We were talking about R&D earlier. Unfortunately, I met you after we'd done this, because it would have been a good claim. But we were the first company in Europe, if not the world, to do multi-layer printing to block out and colour enhance. So to block it out, you basically, what they used to do is they would print the face of the PVC material, and then they would turn it over, and some really clever guys would mask it all off and spray the back black. Or if it was colour enhanced, sometimes there'd be a gradient, so they'd have to spray that and stuff. Really, really clever stuff. But we bought a printer, and they said, right, you can print one side, turn it over, print the other side. And they tested it over 3 meters, but some of the prints we do were 20 odd meters long. So you can imagine the registration started to do that. So Ray, who's our technical manager, he actually went over to Meredith to work with the EFI engineers, and he's from a screen print background. So he was like, "Can we just layer it?" And they were like, "Yeah, let's see if we can." And they came up with the technology, and now it's pretty industry standard now. When we first used to send them out, we'd send it out, and someone would say, "It doesn't block out," and we'd be like, "What? Oh God, what's wrong?" And then I'd just say, have you put a light under it? And they'd say, no, it's just not got any black on the back. And so I just put a light under it. And they were like, wow, it's like magic, And that actually got us a lot of clients in the start, but we've kept them moving forward. But yeah, so when I go off on a tangent, I always do. You have to keep control of that. Me and my friends have a thing where if we do, we say, right, because Billy Connolly does it. If you've ever been to see him, he'll go off on a massive tangent, and then he'll sort of come back to it at the end. So we just say Billy Connolly to each other if one of us starts doing it.
Fine, I remember that.
Yes,
I think Donald Trump calls it the weave.
Yeah.
He's like, there is a point in here somewhere, and he'll go off via Timbuktu.
Yeah, that's very me. So when I started, I'd go into the factory for some advice, and people just run out of the way to look busy, and I'm like, oh. So it was hard. It was really hard when I started. I mean, I was lucky that I had recruited a couple of people that worked there, so they knew me already, and I'd been successful for them, and we developed a relationship. So that helped to have a couple of people sort of on your side. But I think the way really how I kind of won people round was just to ask questions, just to see what they were doing. Ask questions about themselves as well, but also to be genuinely interested in print. I was brand new to the industry, and I still love it now, but then I loved it then, was just very curious about what was happening, and made sure that I asked questions and made sure that I made changes. At that time, that was not my job to do that. I just kind of slowly took over the business. Because I just, there'd be jobs to be done, and I'd go, all right, well, I'll do it. And when there was decisions to be made, people were hesitant to make the decisions, whereas I would just make them. And I think as a as a business owner, that's the attitude you have to have. You know, it's a small to medium business. You've got to make decisions quickly. Even if it's the wrong decision, you can reverse it, you know, but you've got to make decisions quickly. And you need to listen to the team and see what's the right outcome for them.
Yeah. So you know, you ask yourself the question there, how did you win people over? I mean, ultimately you became the MD, and I think you're involved in MBO. Is that right? You bought the business.
Yeah. So me and my ex-husband, we bought the business from the rest of the family.
Yeah.
Just before COVID hit. So you know,
Good times. Yeah.
Good times. Yeah, good times. So then we were the joint owners, but he didn't really work in the business, whereas I did, which is why it's now mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was tough. During COVID, it was really tough.
Yeah.
We were looking at our figures the other day. In April 2020, we did £28.
Solid. Yeah.
Yeah, a solid £28.
Wow. Yeah, that's mad. I want to come back to the point about curiosity, because there'll be people listening that have either had to win a team round or are in the process of trying to win a team round. And what I'm gathering from you is you're not piling in there with advice or being bossy or anything like that. Actually, what you're doing is being genuinely curious about how stuff works, what's going wrong, what's going right, and asking a lot of questions.
Yeah, even now,
right.
I go and ask, you know, I don't feel silly to go and say, sorry, I know I've been doing this for 14 years, but what do they mean by this? Because people call stuff different things as well. So honestly, sometimes we Google stuff to find out what they mean, and it is something we do. It is something we print. It's just someone else calls it a different thing.
Yeah. And do you think that display of vulnerability has helped that process?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
No, you're not pretending to know everything, are you?
No, God, no. I don't know everything
Which is
at all.
a really common. It's a common thing that small business leaders do.
Yeah, I think though. I think I've been lucky in a way, because a lot of business owners, you know, they will work in an area. So, you know, I don't know, like say working in recruitment, okay? You'll work in recruitment, you're working for someone else, you're making good commission, but you're looking at how much money is going back into the business. So you think, right, I'm going to start my own business.
Yep.
And actually, you've got the skills of recruitment, but you don't have the skills as a business owner. Now, I didn't have the skills in print or the skills as a business owner, so I've learned them as I've gone along. But I didn't start thinking I knew everything. I start knowing I knew nothing. And I don't know how much you know about how much I love Ted Lasso. I love Ted Lasso.
I did read it in an article that you're a big Ted Lasso fan.
I am, and if you come to our offices, we have them all branded. We have all like the characters around. We put it up a year and a half ago on temporary vinyl, and we're like, we'll change it. We've never changed it.
Yeah,
so
classic.
we keep saying we will.
Yeah.
But there's a scene in Ted Lasso where he's playing darts, and he says he credits it to a poet, but yeah, I've actually looked it up and I'm not sure it is his words, so we won't reference that. But he says, be curious, not judgmental. And that's very much how Ted Lasso's character is. And it's very much how I am. You know, I'll speak to strangers, I'll get chatting to someone about something. Growing up, I was very shy, really shy as a kid. So I kind of had to make myself talk to people and make myself ask the questions. And even now I still get nervous with things and people don't believe me, but I do. But I think it's important. That's how you've got to be brave and you've got to be curious and you've got to ask questions. And that is how you will succeed, because you learn.
Why do you think people struggle with this so much? Because it is a common issue.
With being nervous?
No, with asking questions as opposed to as a default position.
Because you don't want to look stupid, do
Yeah.
you? So I remember the first time, so when I first joined FESPA UK board, we'd my friend Tom lived nearby where it was, and he dropped me off and he was like, oh darling, this doesn't look very nice. I said, no, it doesn't really, does it, the place we were at? And anyway, said goodbye to him. And we had a dinner the night before, so I went to the dinner, that was okay. And in the morning, I'm sat having breakfast, and I was with two very technical guys. and they were saying words that I didn't even know. And I was like, oh my God, I should not be here.
Just a sea of acronyms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like, I'm so out of my depth.
Yeah, I know the
And
feeling.
I nearly called Tom and said, like, just get me out of here. But it would be rude, so I didn't. So I went to the meeting, and actually I was fine. I was absolutely fine. And I asked questions and gave my opinion and felt like a valid team member from day one. But it's difficult to feel like that. It's difficult to feel like, oh God, someone's going to ask me something and I don't know it. So you'll just sort of pretend that you know it. And I think also people don't like to, it's difficult to talk to people you don't know. It's difficult to talk to strangers. It's not a default setting that people have. There's a book by Malcolm Gladwell, I think it's Malcolm Gladwell, I'm terrible with names, but it's called The Tipping Point. And he talks about some war or something, and they'd sent two guys off at the same time to like go and spread the word. And on the west side, it hardly got spread, and on the east side, it did. And there's loads of different factors for it, but it's because they think the origin is that one person didn't like talking to strangers and the other did.
Yeah.
So it can make a big difference.
Yeah. I think coming back to the original question, I think there's probably another factor which is more unique about you than other business leaders. You don't mind asking the question, even if you don't want to hear the answer.
Yeah.
You know, you said that when you joined RMC, you quite quickly identified a load of things that just weren't right. These were probably known truths.
Yeah, well, I only identified them by asking other people, didn't I? I wasn't like I didn't come in with any experience of running a business.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I came in and thought, oh, that's not how you should do things. It's that I asked questions and spoke to people and said, yeah, but what do you really think? Like, what do you really think about that?
Yeah.
Because I think people don't want to give you, especially if they see you as, even though I wasn't the boss, but because I had a direct line into the boss, they don't want to give you difficult scenarios, do they? They just want to say, oh yeah, everything's fine, when it's not fine. But you need to look at things when it's not fine and tackle them.
Yeah. And like I said, it's a really common problem. And I think potentially a good takeaway, you know, you're obviously seeking the things that need to be fixed by being really curious and asking questions, even if you don't want to hear the answer. The answer is going to upset you because that's an opportunity to solve for something.
Yeah.
And I guess the takeaway there is, if you're avoiding something, you know, seek the hard truth, because the hard truth is actually probably, you know, the biggest opportunity for an area of improvement.
Yeah, and also, like, we all do it. There's jobs you don't want to do, so you avoid them, and then actually it doesn't take you half as long as you think it's going to take you. So it's a good idea when you start your day to think, right, what are those jobs that I don't want to do, and just get them done. I don't think I do that all of the time, but actually when I do, you'd be amazed sometimes, something that you really don't want to tackle and you do it and it goes completely differently from how you thought it would, and it was actually really easy and like took no time at all. So I think it is important to sort of look at the areas that make you uncomfortable and tackle those first.
Yeah, definitely. And there's braveness in that. And I remember you telling me a story about your early days at FESPA. And that must have been quite daunting. You know, you were going in there as a relatively new business owner in a field which is dominated by some pretty established players.
Yeah.
And quite a male-dominated environment from memory of going to various events. You're new to the board. You know, what were some of those early experiences like for you?
To be honest, like I said to you earlier, for my very first FESPA UK meeting, I was really scared of doing it. But actually, it was fine. When I first joined FESPA UK, I was the second woman on the board, but unfortunately she left just after I joined, so I was the only woman on the board. And I am still the only woman on the board. We have had a couple of ladies, but they've left, so I don't know if it's something I'm doing. Who knows? But I find I've always worked in male-dominated environments, so it doesn't really bother me. But I think so this is a bit left field, but I'm going to talk about the patriarchy of pockets. So
Pockets as in clothing pockets.
clothing pockets,
Clothing
yeah.
pockets.
So
good.
if anyone wants to have a Google of it, it is a thing. And if if you speak to ladies, they'll say, "Oh, that's a nice dress. That's a nice skirt." Literally, thanks. It's got pockets, because women's clothing often doesn't have pockets. Men's clothing mostly does. And back in the 16th century, everyone used to have like little purses that were tied around the outside, and then they started to sew them into men's garments, but women still had them outside. Eventually they put them inside, but women would have these like purses but under loads of layers of skirts, so they're never going to be able to get these purses out. But the idea was that women didn't need to carry anything important because they didn't need to carry money, etc. And also back when, they used to think women were witches and things, they didn't want them concealing potions, they didn't want them to have anything where they could conceal things. But as time's moved on, even now, women's pockets on average are 48% smaller than men's pockets. So it is a thing. It is a bit of a, it sounds silly, but women are still being denied pockets that they can conceal things in. Now, most of my clothes have pockets. I got pockets today, because I like pockets, so I will buy clothes with pockets. So I will go and find the clothes with pockets. And I think life's a bit like that. If you're in a place where you want an opportunity and there is no opportunity, you need to go find that opportunity. If there still isn't the opportunity, you need to create the opportunity. So I once was scrolling through Instagram, and there was a lady, and she'd sewn pockets into her wedding dress, and I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. So I'd commented on it, not knowing her, and she'd come back to me, and I was like, oh, I wish I'd done that. What a great idea. There's no pockets in wedding dresses, make your own pockets. She came back to me, and then I sort of looked, and I was like, oh my God, she's a dancer off Strictly, but I don't watch Strictly, so I didn't know who she was. Now, of all the hundreds of thousands of people that probably get in contact with her, she got back to me about pockets, because that's honestly how strongly some women feel about having pockets in clothes, because we don't have them. But if it's the same with, it's the same with the workplace, go find your pocket, go find your opportunity. And there's many men that are allies to women working. It's rare that you find someone that's like, oh, I don't like women in the workplace. You do find them. I have employed them. But most men want to support women. We shouldn't be, in this day and age, we shouldn't be talking about us being a minority group, but like half the population, and there's no reason that women can't do as well as men. Absolutely none.
And do you think it changes your approach? Do you think, when you're in a room full of men, you are cognizant of it, and then you adapt the way you are?
Not for me, no. It doesn't. I think sometimes my approach is different to being with a group of men. My approach is different to theirs. And some men don't like that. And some men will actually sort of reassess their approach, because, I think women do think about things differently to some men. But then I suppose some women think about things differently to some other women. But yeah, personally, I've never really felt the need to adapt. And actually, maybe that's why I've succeeded in a room full of men, because I've just been myself.
In yourself, yeah. Yeah. And with your senior team at RMC, have you got a senior team with quite a diverse group, men and women?
No, we're still very male based.
Still male based.
Yeah, we I think how many women we have actually. I think we've got 4 women across a 20-person team. We have had other women that have been with us for a while and then left. We were only a small team, so we've got 3 directors, there's me and 2 men. But I think because print is very male-dominated environment. I mean, our works manager, Lynn, she's a lady, she's worked in print on the shop floor for a lot of years. And she's as good as any of the men, if not better. But it does seem an industry that women don't seem to really want to get into, and I don't really know why that is, but so that's why we're doing it at FESPA UK with the Next Generation project. We're looking at getting young people into print, and that includes getting women into print. And the printing charity, you'll know of the printing charity, they do the Rising Star Awards. Now, I didn't go this year, but last year, half of the awards were for young women, so it's definitely improving. But I think the visibility of print, like, you know, if you go to a careers day, no one's talking about print. You go and see your careers advisor, no one's talking about print. If you speak to children about print, generally they think it's, you know, leaflets, business cards. You speak to anyone about print, you think it's leaflets, business cards. When they say, oh, what do you do? Oh, I need some business cards. I say, oh, sorry, they're a bit small for me. I don't do them, but I can recommend someone for you. Like most items are printed. You know, you've got stuff in your car that's printed. You've got your shoes will be printed. It's prints everywhere,
Yeah.
but people don't realise it's everywhere.
Yeah. I want to change tack slightly. I saw in an interview once you got asked if you could be stuck on a desert island with anybody, who would you be stuck with? Do you remember what you answered?
I will have said no one. I'd just be by myself.
Yeah.
Because I don't think anyone could cope with me by myself for that long, and I certainly couldn't cope with anyone else.
Did you remember what you followed it up with?
Probably just I'd take a load of books.
Yeah, you said if I could be stuck with anything, it would be a library.
Yeah.
If you could just take a couple of books with you, what would you be taking?
That's a really interesting question because I read loads. I read loads of fiction. Like, I know loads of other business owners who they read loads of like books that help them with the business. I get really bored by them. So definitely fiction all the way. Last year I tasked myself to read 100 books and I only managed 86. So I'm back on it this year.
Weak, yeah.
Tried
That's
into 100.
Yeah, very poor.
Yeah, I know. Life kind of got in the way a little bit with that. But
only 86.
So yeah, there's book called Still Life. That's really good. It took me about 4 attempts to get into it, and then when I did, it's like one of those books that you don't want it to end. I really enjoyed that. This year, read a book called All the Colours of the Dark. That was really good. There's a book called Young Mungo. It's a bit hard work. Like, it cuts you, but that again, very good. I'll read anything really, and then see where it goes from there. I'll read something and then I'll really read everything by that author.
Yeah.
And then go back to sort of finding someone else.
Yeah, I'm similar. You kind of start with their most recent one and then you kind of track their journey. Yeah. I've done that a couple of times. I want to talk about someone that's inspired you quite a lot over the years, who you've spoken about quite openly, who I know very, very loosely, but you spent a fair amount of time with. And I just want to pick up on, firstly, the role of a mentor, and secondly, why in particular this guy really inspired you and what you really liked about his leadership style and the way he operated.
Okay. So you're talking about Lascelles, I think.
I'm talking about Lascelles, yeah.
Barrow, who unfortunately, he passed away in May, and I miss him very much. In fact, I walked past, he loved a cigar, did Lascelles, and I walked past a cigar shop the other day, being in London. He's from London, and it just made me a bit sad to see it.
Yeah.
But funny enough, when he passed away, a lot of people said to me, oh, you've lost a mentor, but he kind of didn't mentor me because that wasn't his style. He would talk to me about something and he would ask a lot of questions. He was somebody who asked an awful lot of questions. In fact, if you go to Augustus Martin, I believe they have a quote from Lascelles Barrow, and it's just why. Because he would say why all the time. Almost sometimes it would be like, when you've got a toddler, why? But because he's trying to get to the root of why you're doing something.
Yeah.
And he'd ask me a load of questions and then he'd just go, there you go then. Like, I've answered it myself. He was, you've met him. He was a presence in a room, wasn't he?
Amazing, yeah.
And he just sort of said what he thought and did what he wanted to. But he started the business with his partner straight out of like a print school or a print college. And they had no money. And then all these years later, got a very successful business that turns over X amount of millions, and he was a very successful guy. And I believe he was successful because he was like Ted Lasso. He was curious, not judgmental. He swore a lot more than Ted Lasso, but
that was one of my memories.
But he would ask questions. tell you the most amazing stories of like, you know, I was sat on a plane chatting to this person, and the next thing he's off skiing with them like a few weeks later. And he would always, I mean, the first time I met him, he used to play poker on TV as well. And when I went to Sitges, so no, first ever FESPA event, and I looked and I was like, I really recognise that guy. I'm terrible with names and faces, absolutely ridiculous with them. And I sat for a bit and I was like, I think he plays poker. And I thought, oh, he must be like a guest speaker or something, because I didn't know him from the print industry. But no, he's a legend within the print industry. And I thought, you know, I'm just going to go and speak to him. I was very nervous to talk to him. So I went over and spoke to him, and then spent some of the weekend chatting with him. And then he's you know, kept in touch with me. And actually, I think without Lascelles, I wouldn't be on the FESPA Global Board. To be honest, I wouldn't be on the FESPA Global Board if I hadn't have gone to Sitges, because I'm actually on the board with a number of people I met in Sitges, and I've kept in touch with them over the years. And they've all been mentors to me at a point, and they've all been people I could approach and ask questions, especially when I was learning about the industry. And they're all very friendly, warm people who love the print industry.
Yeah, I think there's so many lessons in here. I just love the way you find the hard thing and then lean into it. You know, and a lot of people avoid the hard thing, you know, and lean into the thing which is going to give them instant gratification. I'm really guilty of that as well. But you know,
I think we're all guilty of doing that. And sometimes you need quick wins, though, don't you? Sometimes you really do need a quick win.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you'll have had the same training as me in recruitment, but probably, where, you know, you used to make a placement and there'd be a big deal made of making the placement. And that was the time to get on the phone and start making sales calls, because you were buoyed up from your placement. But instead, you'd be chatting to your mates and they'd say, oh, how have you done it? You know, and you'd be like swanning around the place talking about big wins. But actually, that's the time to do the hard work, because you were feeling positive. Because, I mean, it was just death by phone call sometimes, wasn't it? You'd just make so many phone calls that you wouldn't even get to speak to anyone. And sometimes you need the positives, you need the quick win to keep you going.
Yeah. No, it's such a good point. Yeah, actually, I wasn't in recruitment for long enough to get that level of training.
No.
No. But
I was lucky. I used to work for the S3 group, and they're
did you?
a good group, yeah.
Yeah. I used to actually recruit into S3, rec to rec.
Oh, did you?
Recruiting into the recruitment industry. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's about as, I don't know, they insure the insurance industry as well, reinsure. There must be an insurer for the people that reinsure. Anyway,
Yeah.
we digress.
Yeah.
I want to close up by asking you what either the best or the worst piece of advice you've ever been given is.
I suppose you're going to go back to Lascelles again, and it is to ask questions. It's to ask questions and learn from the answers. So a lot of people, they will ask you questions and you can see them, they're waiting till they can speak again. So you've got to ask questions, listen and learn. I think, yeah, that's the best piece of advice I've been given.
So let's just, before we close up, I'm really interested in this because firstly, I'm really guilty of this. And so this is a very good lesson for me.
Okay.
But let's say you're asking a question and the answer is that's coming back. I think I know the answer to this already now that I've started this question. The answer coming back is fundamentally different to what you might perceive to be the right answer. And maybe you can see them potentially going down the wrong route. How do you tackle that? When would you flick into advice mode?
Well, ask a few more questions.
Yeah, I thought that might be the answer.
Ask some more questions. I suppose, you know, like from the training that I've had as well, because I've worked for some big companies in London before I moved up to Hull, and then worked for some smaller ones. But I've always worked in sort of sales-led businesses, and the whole idea is you ask and ask and ask questions, because that's how you get the sale. That's how you close the sale, by knowing what they want. And I think we're all guilty of going into a conversation, or especially a sales conversation, where you know what your outcome is. It's to sell X, but sometimes the person wants Y. So you need to keep asking questions. But sometimes, yeah, say if it's something, and I was talking to another business owner and I'm thinking, Christ, I wouldn't do that. I'll keep asking questions,
Yeah.
and then maybe say, so what do you think the outcome will be? And sometimes I'm wrong and they're right, but other times it's maybe the other way. So I think it's just a case of just keep talking and listening.
Yeah, and be prepared to be wrong, I suppose.
Yes.
You might have the wrong, and you're thinking on it might be completely wrong, and actually the more you ask, the more you might go, actually fair, you are probably correct on this.
Yeah, and there's loads of times I've been wrong. I don't like to admit when I'm wrong, but I will admit it. And there's times, I'm lucky I've got a good team around me at RMC, and they will be honest and they will say, look, I don't know why you're doing that, and we'll talk about it. And then sometimes the answer will be, yes, let's move forward with it. And they, the first day we got back after COVID, I got my directors together and said, right, I'm going to buy a printer. And they were just like, what on earth are you doing? But we talked about it. They asked questions. I answered them. I asked them questions. We got to the end and we bought a printer. There's been other times that I've maybe come up with a crazy scheme and they've said, what are you doing? And then we've talked it through, asked questions of each other. Yeah. And then I've been wrong, so we've not moved on with what I wanted to do.
We talk a lot on this podcast about culture curation. Small businesses talk about culture a lot. And actually, do you think that the process of asking lots of questions, does that help with your culture? What type of culture do you think that curates?
Yeah, I think so. I'd like to think that everybody knows that, they can approach me. And everybody knows that they can tell me that something's not working or suggest a different way of doing something. That is the kind of culture that we have, and I think it makes it a nice place to work because you know that you're valued, you know that you'll be listened to, and you know that your opinion matters. Yeah,
interesting. Nicole, I've learned a lot. Thankfully, in this job, part of my job, I have to ask lots of questions, so I feel like I've really nailed it today. But it's certainly a big takeaway for my approach elsewhere. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Behind the SME. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. It really helps others find the show. If you want to get in touch, you can find our email in the description. Until then, keep building, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.